Chapter 9. Jack, Elizabeth, and Paxton sat at the kitchen table, Jack and Paxton with a glass of stout whiskey, and Elizabeth slowly sipping a cup of warm herbal tea. Elizabeth was aware that their hitherto cheerful dispositions had disappeared as soon as they'd returned to the ranch and been fully informed of the situation at hand. Jack had given them complete details regarding the onerous removal of the mare from the Rain property. He'd fully disclosed just how incensed the mare was when he finally accepted that he'd lost the battle. Elizabeth knew, as well as everyone else at that table, that Maxwell would be back. She shivered inwardly at the thought. The realization that she'd almost become Stanton's wife, a distant reality that had been so repugnant to her, was now foremost in her mind. A picture of Maxwell in bed and in the throes of passion, with her as his unwilling companion, invaded her mind. Her body shook so violently with revulsion that even Jack and Paxton noticed and looked at her inquisitively. Explaining that she'd felt a bit of a chill, she took another warming sip of tea. She considered her intimacy with Paxton and how gentle he'd always been with her, and soon the unwelcome image of the mare was replaced with a pleasant memory of her husband. It had not taken them long after the wedding night to thrive at perfecting their physical union. Everything about their intimate lifestyle was completely satisfying and exciting. Elizabeth considered herself very lucky, for she'd heard it wasn't like that for everyone. Her whole body cringed again as she inwardly acknowledged that had she married the mare, intimacy would have been an obligation, and probably one he'd require frequently. Certainly, he would not have made as caring a lover as her husband. Regretfully, Elizabeth concluded that it had been entirely irrational for her to have considered marrying Maxwell Stanton, even to save Paxton. She peeked at her husband and contemplated his thoughts. Secretly, Elizabeth wondered if he'd ever imagined her in bed with the mare, particularly after her false declaration of love for the latter. She conjectured what that must do to a man, to picture another man making love to his wife. What must that have done to Paxton? Since Elizabeth knew how much she truly detested the mare, she hadn't considered that Paxton would come to any other conclusion than the true one, that she was being forced to do all of this in order to save him. She immediately thought of Paxton in a fond embrace with another woman, of him doing to another woman what he did with her, and she felt an intense jealousy overwhelm her. My poor Paxton, what my ignorance put you through, she empathized silently. Jack, what am I to do about Stanton? Paxton blurted suddenly, snapping Jack and Elizabeth out of their private contemplations and back to the circumstances at hand. Elizabeth glanced first at Paxton, noting his furrowed brow, and then at Jack, who appeared composed but concerned. I was a bounty hunter. I'm used to tracking outlaws across various terrains, and when I catch my prey, I'm used to the law being on my side. I guess I'm not much good at sitting and plotting, or sitting and waiting for my adversary to make the next move. This battle with the mare, it's new territory for me, and I'm not clear on what my next course of action should be. I feel frustrated."
Jack folded his arms and exhaled.
"Well, lad, you should really pat yourself on the back, because you've lasted longer than most people who've gone up against the mare. Saving your father, of course, miss."
The mention of her father stung and gave Elizabeth the courage to confront Jack. "Mr. Strom, I couldn't help but feel that you had something to tell me when we first met. Do you know anything about the disappearance of my father?" She touched Paxton's hand affectionately, an obvious gesture of regret for interrupting his line of conversation. Jack looked as if he was suddenly inundated with worry, and it took him quite some time to reply.
"Your father was a good man and friend. Before he disappeared, he came to see me at my ranch. He said Maxwell was up to something, but he couldn't be sure of what. Naturally, as any father who feared for his life would, he asked me to watch over you. The only unnatural thing, which perplexed me a little, was that he insisted you remain at the ranch until you were ready to leave on your own, or until you were kicked off. When Maxwell took over the ranch, I could do nothing but leave you there, since it didn't seem to me that your safety or well-being was at risk."
Startled, Elizabeth blurted, "But why would my father want me to stay at the ranch if he were gone?"
Strom shrugged. "Your father yielded no clues as to his reasoning. Perhaps he hoped you'd inherit when you came of age. Stanton would entrust the ranch to your care eventually."
"My father hated that man. I wouldn't have expected him to want me to stay with Stanton and gain his trust."
"Enemies go as far as you keep them, Elizabeth. Your father would have wanted you to have that ranch, if at all possible."
Jack sighed loudly.
"When you were older, he instructed me to tell you word for word, and he made me memorize it so I could recite it to you. Keep your chin up. There is always a star to be found in the darkest of places."
Jack Strom pondered Elizabeth's lovely face and realized what he'd hoped for so long. The phrase meant more to her than just mere encouragement from her long-lost father. Fenton Stanton finished his meal and wiped his lips disdainfully.
"Well, little brother, now that I have been adequately fed, I suppose you might as well fill me in as to why you have summoned me."
Maxwell cleared his throat uneasily.
"Yes, but not here. Let's go into the parlor and talk."
He stood up, directing his attention to the servant waiting for any additional requests.
"We'll have our brandy and cigars in the parlor."
"Very good, sir." The servant left the dining room to relay clean-up orders, and Maxwell led his brother into the parlor. The parlor was dimly lit, with 4 wall lamps and a fire that crackled menacingly in a large stone fireplace. Hardback books encumbered finely crafted bookshelves lining the eastern wall. Fenton noted with a twinge of jealousy that each bookshelf had been constructed with the convenience of a column of drawers just underneath the shelves. An elaborate Chesterfield, flanked by 2 side tables, sat in the middle of the room, angled toward both the fireplace and a baby grand piano. A bar flanked the back corner of the room, and from what Fenton could see, was well equipped with an assortment of wines, liquors, and ales. A pair of beautifully etched glass doors opened into what Maxwell referred to as his living room, where an ornate chess set and a sitting area could be seen. The sitting area was featured in the center of the living room, with a throw rug which matched the room's rosy hues. The living room had a much brighter atmosphere than the parlor, which was a dark maroon color, with a slightly darker toned carpet. Fenton wondered at his brother's obscure motives when it came to his interior decorating. The parlor was evidently the room in which Maxwell preferred to entertain, so why was it less inviting? Maxwell offered his brother a cigar, which he accepted and lit it for him with a match. "This is very good," said Fenton, obviously surprised. "Yes," Maxwell replied snootily, taking a deep puff. "I buy the tobacco from a friend in Virginia, who is a skilled tobacco farmer." He delicately tapped the end of the cigar into an ash-tray and smiled at Fenton. "Although my territory is not without benefits, brother. The hint of peppermint you taste? That is grown and refined here." "Indeed." Fenton relished another taste of his cigar. "Now, Maxwell, why am I here?" Maxwell contemplated how he would present his situation to his clever elder brother, and decided candid honesty was the best course of action. "You are here, Fenton, because of a woman," he stated. Fenton grinned, enjoying the strain he perceived on his sibling's face. "Isn't everything because of a woman?"